Hi, Brett. I'm so glad to speak to you. So, for anyone that doesn't know, Brett Lloyd is a carnivore coach. Been he's been following this diet now for something like 1.5+ thousand days, for several years basically, and he's posting daily on Facebook saying, I'm still going, I'm still going. He has a picture of his meals, so it's like steak, eggs, things like that. Reason I wanted to bring him on today was just to ask him about how carnivore has helped him in terms of mental health, and maybe to give some insights towards that. So, with the diet, what do you say would be the first thing that's changed?
Well, today is my 1556th day of eating meat and drinking water. And I suffered from chronic mental illness for over 43 years of my life. I had major depression with psychotic features, chronic anxiety, and chronic insomnia. The carnivore way of eating eliminated my depression symptoms on day 24 completely. They have never, ever returned, not even for a moment. It took 6 months of eating meat and drinking water for the anxiety to be eliminated completely. I haven't been anxious about anything in a mental health kind of way for over 4 years. And the insomnia took 10 months to be resolved entirely. And I have not had insomnia now for just under 4 years. I experienced an incredible skin improvement. I had eczema in my elbows, my heels, my ankles. My scalp used to be a scaly mess. All of that's been completely cleared up with the carnivore way of eating. My eyesight actually improved. I had to get a new driver's license a few years ago, and I took my glasses. For 10 years I had to wear glasses in order to drive. And I took my glasses to the DMV, and they were like, well, you need to try to read the line with your glasses or without your glasses. I could read the line. I could read it clearly, whereas 10 years before carnivore, I couldn't read it at all. But those are the main things that have happened to me just by eating meat and drinking water. My sanity is tied directly to this way of eating, and I don't deviate from it because I was crazy long enough. I don't ever want to experience another moment of that. So that's why I am so consistent with my eating, because I'm not going to risk. There's no taste, there's no texture, there's no social setting worth me putting my sanity at risk. So I refuse to do so.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, we're similar in some ways. I mean, I kind of fell into it and like the side of it, which is both the physical and the mental health benefits you get from it. So, my skin started to clear up a bit. My hair's not falling out as much. Admittedly, my hair will go very, very soon.
It was
But
too late.
it's too late for you. Yeah. Oh well. But you're like double my age, so I think you can get away with it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had eczema as well, and I tried all these creams and things. What the doctors give you just doesn't work. I mean, ultimately, your body's biology is what's going to make the biggest difference. How it's affected by your environmental factors, most notably your diet. As you and I have both noticed, eczema and the skin, having dry skin, has improved on the carnivore diet. So when you started the diet, was it that you said, all right, I'm just going to go for beef and lamb, or how did you approach it initially? So was it a mixed diet? Was it a bit of eggs, cheese,
Okay, it was in the beginning. I ate the first couple of weeks, it was bacon, steak, and eggs. And then after 2 weeks, the eggs stopped being satisfying, so I got rid of them. I've not had any dairy, any eggs since July of 2018, and I haven't missed them. I learned about how to succeed at this from following the Zeroing In on Health group on Facebook, where you have a lot of 10-year plus veterans of this way of eating. Carnivores like Kelly Hogan, Dr. Lisa Wiedemann, Charles Washington, and I, I I did a lot of research here. They had a lot of they still do have a lot of really good reading materials. And what I discovered was the biggest reason that people get dissatisfied with living this way is from eating just one kind of meat. And I was like, I can intellectually understand that to a degree. So after I thought about it for a while, I realized while bacon was never my favorite kind of meat, there was never a meal in my life that bacon was on the plate that I didn't enjoy. So I made a decision right then that I would never have just one kind of meat on my plate. I would always have at least two, and one of those would always be bacon. So it was steak and bacon. My wife would get these huge chunks of London broil and cut them up into steaks. I had fish and bacon. I had pork shoulder roast and bacon. I had bacon with everything that I ate for that first few months. And it was amazing. It was delicious. I was never bored, not even for a moment. But then one of the directions that I got from the four that from zeroing in on health is only eat the meat that you crave, that you can afford, that satisfies you. And I knew I wasn't there yet. Intuitively, I knew I wasn't eating exactly what I needed to eat to fully experience everything that this lifestyle has to offer. And my wife and I were at a Sam's Club, enormous meat department, just huge, biggest meat department in our area. And I noticed there's these beautiful tomahawk steaks, there's all this beautiful filet mignon, all of it priced way out of my reach. Anyway, there were these tubes of lean ground beef, 90-10. And I could not stop looking at those things. And my intuition was like, go get one, pick it up and look at it. And I did, and I was just fascinated. I didn't know that ground beef came in tubes like this large. It was a 10-pound tube. And I told my wife, I said, I think I need to take this home and eat it. And the second bite of the first ground beef patty that I had, I knew I had found what I had been looking for because it satisfied me completely. And so since December of 2018, I've only had lean ground beef, 90-10 or 93-7, and bacon. And with the exception of a handful of steaks that other people have bought for me. And that works for me. It's satisfying. Every bite of every meal is the most delicious thing in the world. I'm not tired of it. I'm not bored of it. And I'm thriving because of it.
Brilliant. Yeah. I mean, I'm quite the same. I mean, I have quite a varied diet. So I eat pretty more foods than most carnivore folk on the internet. I'm sure I'll probably narrow it down more as time goes on. I get more intuitive. You know, I've been doing it now for like solidly for about 4 months or so. So I'm getting there. What's interesting as well is you touched on like the affordability aspect of it. So are you finding that, you know, some people say you have more grass-fed beef and just standard beef. Like, do you think there's much to that, or is that a load of nonsense?
I for some people, it's made a difference. For myself, I have purchased grass-finished meat. I can't tell any difference whatsoever in it. It doesn't justify the extra expense. Part of me believes that there's certain people whose physiology thrives better on grass finished, and there's nothing wrong with that if they can afford to buy it. But for me, it's mainly a marketing gimmick. I just don't see any need for me to spend extra money to not get any extra benefit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we have beef over here that's grass-fed the majority of the year. I think if you buy any meat from the supermarket, it will be 75% grass fed at least, and in the winter there's silage and they're given hay and other things. So I wanted to ask as well, so you post an update on your Facebook every day about 1,500 days, been doing as the veteran carnivores have been suggesting, and they've taught me well, sort of thing. And I've got to this point now where I'm this many days in, I can still manage to do it. So would you, quite an obvious answer really, but would you say this was sustainable? And what do you say to people that thought it isn't sustainable?
Well, it is sustainable. And I have not just my own experience, but I've got lab work to back it up just exactly how sustainable it is. I can't reach it right now, but it's here. Yeah. I had lab work done in February, and I'm not deficient in anything whatsoever. My cholesterol actually went down from 2019 when I had last previously had lab work done, and I feel amazing. My lab work shows that I have less than a 0.4 chance of a cardiovascular event. Now that's not zero, but it's pretty darn close. And I'm 61 years old.
I'd take that, yeah.
I feel amazing every single day. I experience what I term as effortless daily happiness. I wake up smiling. I'm in a great mood before my feet ever hit the floor in the morning, because I know I got another wonderful day ahead of me. And Dr. Ken Berry and I had a conversation about this once, and he's like, Brett, if a human being is properly nourished, properly hydrated, gets a decent amount of rest, somebody cares for them, and the environment permits it, the natural state of that human being is one of happiness. And for somebody who was miserable as hell for decades, happiness is a really big deal to me.
I
hope I haven't gotten too far from the purpose of your question, but I just, this way of eating is sustainable. It's not hard. It's only difficult if people choose to make it difficult. I'm nobody special. I'm just flesh and bone like everybody else. I am just committed to never being crazy again. And the way of eating is always going to keep that from happening. And I've learned I had to give up a job because I couldn't eat when I was hungry. I could only eat hours later. And after 2 weeks, there was a negative accumulative benefit. My wife and I got into a disagreement, which that by itself wasn't the big deal. But after about 20 minutes, she's like, threw up her hand. She said, you sound just exactly like you used to. You're not making any sense whatsoever. And the only thing that was different, I was still eating the same amount of meat every day, but I wasn't able to eat when I was hungry. And 2 weeks of that, things started going sideways. I'm like, there's no job worth me risking this for. None. So I had to give it up. And now I have 3 jobs instead of just one. And I'm happy beyond words. At times it feels like I'm living a fairy tale.
Brilliant. I love that. I love hearing that story from you. I've heard it quite a few times, but really brings me joy to hear that. Like I don't often say it about a lot of things. Probably the most unexpressive person ever, but that's really interesting. Really just great. I wanted to ask as well about, I mean, if someone was to go back in time and say, Brett, here's this diet, the carnivore diet, say 20 years or something. He said, oh, I feel great. You this, that, and the other. It's alleviated my depressive symptoms, things like that. Like craziness, as you said, sort of thing. Would you have taken on, do you think?
If I had gotten the same kind of information that I did from people with the same level of integrity, absolutely I would have. Because being crazy was not fun. I was miserable. I made everyone around me within 100 yards miserable. I was an angry, depressed person. And I was in a rage most all day, every day about something, usually something imagined versus something real. Um, it did not, it didn't do anything good for me to be depressed. And it just got worse over time. So if I'd learned about this 20 years ago, so much misery would never have occurred. I would never have said things to people that were so awful as the things I used to say.
Mm.
And I thought, I knew I was sick, but I didn't realize how sick I was. I thought the problem was really with the rest of the world, when that was not the case. I was the crazy one. And, I took meds as prescribed for 23 years, and all they did was make me obese and crazier. They did not help me in any way. So absolutely, if somebody had come to me with the same quality of integrity that the people I learned this from, Dr. Jordan Peterson, Dr. Sean Baker, and Amber O'Hearn, those were the three people I learned about this from that motivated me to start eating only meat and drinking only water on July 16th of 2018.
That's really cool. So you mentioned earlier about, you've got 3 different jobs at the moment. So could you briefly outline what they are? I'll also ask you some questions about your coaching as well.
Certainly. I work 1 day a week at a print shop. It helps see when you're 61 years old and you've got a 13-year gap in your work history because you were mentally ill. You don't get to pick a lot of jobs. There's not a lot of, oh yeah, I want that guy. Sure. Yeah, that you're qualified. No, so I was fortunate that my wife is the production manager at this print shop, and they needed somebody to do the nastiest job that nobody likes to do. And that's what I do. I clean and reclaim screens there 1 day a week. I've been doing that now for 3 years. I also, as you mentioned, I coach and teach people how to succeed at this wonderful way of eating, and how to make sure that they change their mindset and their behavior in a way that ensures they're never going to go backwards. And I'm a professional musician. I am in a band, I work, I perform. That's my true love of all else is performing. 5 years ago, if somebody said, you're going to be gigging again, I would, what are you smoking and do you have any left? Because I just didn't see that as a possibility. But I thankfully was dead wrong. I started gigging again a year ago, and the band I just joined recently, our first paying job's November 17th, and I can't wait.
I love that. Your story is part of the many things that has inspired me to take it on to the extent I have. I sort of dabbled in the diet before, then I was watching stuff about you, and I thought, I'd say I have all the, I've got autism, as you know, I've had depression, anxiety, and your story really touched me, and yours was one of them that inspired me a lot. So I want to say thank you for that, just initially. And the other thing is, I wanted to ask a bit more about the coaching. So what are you noticing more and more about people that you're coaching? Are they coming to you with certain objections to the diet, or certain problems, mental health, skin, digestion? What is the main issue they're coming to you for?
Well, primarily, most of my clients suffer from some form of mental illness. I'm usually the last stop. They've exhausted everything else, and that they see as a possible fix, a cure, a way to feel better. And I've had some very, 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 very severely depressed people as clients. And those who are able to stop listening to their illness and who chose to follow the directions have done very, very well.
That's brilliant.
And You know, I have been so blessed to watch people who come to me with no hope. And you can see, I can recognize mental illness in people's faces. I can recognize when somebody's hurting. I it's a beautiful skill to have, except there's no off switch. So I don't go to the grocery store often because all I see there is horror shows.
I see that as well. Yeah.
And that's not good for me to look at very long. But most of my clients do come to me with mental illness issues, and I do everything I can to help them succeed at this way of eating. The biggest problem that I run into with clients is they've been sick for so long, they've been hopeless for so long, that change is very, very hard for them. They don't know how to stop listening to the voice in their head. They don't know how to trust their intuition. And these are critical factors for everyone who's suffering from mental illness. You know, depression is a liar. Anxiety is a liar. Fear is another liar. And people who suffer from depression and anxiety are eat up with fear a good bit of the time. And so that presents a lot of challenges. But I've been blessed because of my experience, and the fact that thousands of years ago, when I had hair and a really good waistline, I worked in the psychology field. I worked in a private profit psych hospital. I helped with group therapy. I did individual therapy. I did all those things. So I have an understanding. And it was interesting, while I was working there, I was depressed, but none of these PhD level, master's level psychologists could recognize it. None of them did. Anyway, and through my mental illness, I wrecked that career. I sabotaged it severely. But I'm able to recognize where people are coming from because I've got experience that most clinicians don't have. Most people working in the field aren't doing it because they have a history of mental illness themselves. But when somebody starts trying to describe something that sane people can't process, I can understand it because I used to be where they're at. And have felt that way, had those same thoughts. It's very, I'm in a very fortunate position. But because of my experience, personal experience, I am able to reach people who otherwise couldn't be reached. And
I hope to be
I'm very thankful.
I hope to be in your shoes one day, as in, I mean, luckily I'm a bit younger, so I haven't had to experience the extended prolonged depression and anxiety and fears and things like that. But I can tell when I'm speaking to certain people, they reek of anxiety. You can feel it from them. You know, they say autistic people don't have empathy.
That's not true.
I counter that completely. Anyone that knows me knows I do feel what other people feel, and sometimes it hurts me more. And your story is so inspiring to people like myself that have been through all this and come out the other side on top. So is there any sort of closing thoughts or ideas you wanted to get across to people in this video?
Well, first off, I want to thank you for letting me know that you were inspired by something I was doing and saying. That means a lot to me. That's one of the reasons why I keep doing these. Every once in a while, I'll get frustrated with social media because it is a pain in the ass. There's no getting around it. It's a pain in my backside. But every time I think I'm going to give it up, I get a message from somebody thanking me for doing an interview. The most poignant one was a young man sent me a couple of voice messages thanking me for going on the Carnivore cast. And because of what I had said, they no longer wanted to kill themselves. How do you turn your back on that?
No, it wrecks me inside as well.
You just can't turn your back on that. So I have to advocate for this way of eating. I mean, I love performing music more than anything else, but I can't stop helping people with sharing my experience and my understanding of how beautifully this works. And that's the biggest thing is I want to let other people in the carnivore community know, share your experiences in a way that you're comfortable with, because maybe you only lost 5 pounds, but there's somebody not far away from you who would give anything to just lose 5 pounds. They would be willing to do anything. Their life is just so out of their control that the thought of doing something that 5 pounds is nothing. But for some people, it's everything. And we have to share our stories with people so that the word gets out, that folks don't have to suffer needlessly forever anymore. You don't have to pay into the disease management revenue streams in order to heal yourself. And don't be afraid to share your experience. I guess that's my number one message today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in contact with quite a few people over the next few weeks and months, all in the Carnivore community. I'm getting some people on that, you know, I want them to get their story across, and they're like silent observers. They've sort of been through similar experiences to us, and they've started the carnivore diet and are getting some benefits out of it. So I really want to bring that to the limelight so people can benefit from stories like yours, mine, many, many, many others. How can people find you, Brett, if they wanted to, maybe about coaching, things like that, social media?
On Instagram, you can find me at thankful.carnivore. If you have questions or you'd like to ask me about coaching, all you got to do is private message me. I see them, I answer them as soon as I get them. On Facebook, you can find me under my full name, Brett Lloyd. They can friend you and find me that way. They can't find me through the normal way of searching. I answer all questions. I get hundreds of messages a day, and it's a joy to be able to answer people's questions and help them better understand, hopefully better understand this wonderful way of living called the carnivore lifestyle.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Brett. It really means a lot to me that you've taken the time out of your schedule to arrange this with me. I strongly advise people to follow him, get in contact with him if you've got any questions. He's a great guy. I highly recommend him. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it very much. You have a great rest of your day.
And you. Cheers.